Travis, my good soul. I had a dream this morning. In this dream, I was in a building, and on the second floor, I had a place to sleep. I had a bed, I had some furniture, and I was forced to move because of a woman who was moving in to take my place in that building. And so I moved my bed, my furnishings, at the top of the stairs where there was a little bit of space to allow people to still access the stairs. I tried to put a chair across from me at the stairwell, but the woman came over and tried to post a paper on a bulletin board there at the top of the stairs, and so I was forced to move my chair as well to accommodate her. Then I saw across from me what was originally empty space, and so I began to move my bed and furnishings over to that location until I got there, and then all of a sudden it was filled up with a hospital beds, people that were injured getting treated by the doctors. And so I had to go back to the top of the staircase for my place to live. Today is day number 2 of the Feast of Tabernacles. This is the House of Israel's alternative to the Feast of Tents that Judah held. And it comes from 1 Kings chapter 12, and it is not in the Jewish calendar because it's the House of Israel. This was a dispute over who had the right to rule, according to the story that's being told, that after the death of Solomon, you've got a split of the kingdom. And so you've got people who have their land of inheritance in different locations, and so they're separating themselves and their traditions. And so this is the Exodus equivalent of separating from what is understood to be the great and abominable church, to get to Zion, to have a land of inheritance, where Babylon the whore cannot get to them anymore, free from bondage. In Matthew chapter 4, verse 17, technically 16, but I don't want to acknowledge it because it means a further extension, and I will not accept further extensions. Does not fit the pattern. So in verse 16, it's talking about Hanukkah. The people which sat in darkness saw great light, and to them which sat in the region of shadow of death, light is sprung up. That has to do with the temple. Hanukkah for the Jews, in which they recover their temple from the Greeks and purge the temple of the Greek usurpation of the altar stones to renew it. Similar to Section 85, to set in order the temple from what they called the abomination of desolation. And so Hanukkah this year is the last week of December. I am exceedingly trunky. This has been a very long latter days. And so if it cannot happen by the end of this week, it ain't gonna happen. But there's no way in hell it can't happen. It has to happen because everything has been fulfilled in Scripture. Everything. That pre-show with Perry, Packer, and Scott, yeah, that was to you, Mormons, that it's coming. And Monson told you no. And then Chad Daybell, who's unauthorized, went off the deep end. It's important to follow the SEER. So in verse 17, from that time, Jesus began to preach and to say, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. He starts his ministry. And now this is going to come to a shock for those who have not been following my channel, for those who do not study, for those who just trust leaders without running Matthew chapter 7 verse 15's test, so that you will not be deceived. Matthew 24 likewise warns you of the dangers in the latter days of false Christs, false prophets, false teachers. You have to put people to the test. AI has come out. Did you put it to the test? Or are you just trusting that it's true? If you've been following my channel, you know that AI is a fraud. It needs to be recalled. It's not getting recalled. It was used in our voting machines. It is a fraud and was used in our voting machines. Right, YouTube. So YouTube has creators who make videos who show the views, just like votes for an election. And yet YouTube uses algorithms with AI now, and it is incapable of giving creators the correct view count. We as creators can't trust the analytics. We don't know because we're being lied to by YouTube's AI analytics. And for me especially, I'm being punished by YouTube because of a Mormon employee who will not get fired, who likes to violate YouTube's policy of no bullying and harassment. This is my religion that I do videos of. But because he's a Mormon, Mormons are instantly offended because my religion is Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon as Jewish. Pre-Babylonian captivity Egyptian. It's right there in the beginning of the Book of Mormon. Mormons, why are you offended with me? Why are you threatening me to deny the truth? Did you put Nelson to the test? Monson? Hinckley? Hunter? Benson? Kimball? I'm not sure how to go back. Don't have it memorized. It's not up on the screen. So the kingdom of heaven is at hand refers to the coming of Zion and New Jerusalem. Yes, this was written by a Jew, not a Christian. You don't study the Bible with Christian goggles. You will be wrong. You will have questions. You will have conundrums. You will have contradictions. You will have confusion. You will have a stumbling block. Hey, the Book of Mormon tells you that too. This is prophecy and revelation using the name Jesus for the Messiah character of the future. And so, verse 18. And Jesus, walking by the Sea of Galilee, saw two brethren, Simon, not yet called Peter, but Simon called Peter, and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishers. Peter is the word for seer. Seeing a pattern of the video yet? From the Egyptians, the two eyes of Horus, the Christ of the Egyptians, is the word in Egyptian for seer. Go to facsimile number 2, figure number 3. That was put in from the book of Joseph Papyra because rats had chewed up that section of the hypocephalus. And Egyptologists complain, no, Joseph, that's not what goes there. Really? And yet other hypocephalus put in a boat with the scarab beetle. It's the same thing. It's too bad because Egyptologists don't know, for the most part. I've only seen one who knew that the two eyes of Horus is the word for seer. It's not listed in Gardner's Egyptian sign list. Sir Alan Gardner, considered the foremost Egyptologist, and he didn't even have that simple translation in his sign list. Yeah, he's not so foremost. If you were to go and do other signs that were bigger than the text, you won't find those either. Gardner doesn't know translation. Neither did Budge. He doesn't have them either. I don't know why they still print his books. Stargate reference. And so he says, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." And they straightway left their nets and followed him. The whole point of Matthew is to talk about the Christ of the latter days, who is to harvest for the Feast of Tabernacles, harvest ingathering to Zion. This is not planting of seeds, but the therapeutic groups from which the author Matthew is getting this concept from for his prophecy of the latter days is about that. The therapeutae during the Roman period time, such as the Qumran community, were planting seeds. They were writing the scriptures of prophecy for the future. Kippur, as I've gone over with you, means the writing of fruit. The root word in atonement is fruit, not seed. This can only come from somebody who had deciphered Paleo-Hebrew, because nobody on the face of the earth has. And so there is only one who has deciphered it. And it belongs to the Mormons, and the Mormons reject him. And so this concept of give up your life and follow the Christ to Zion is the Exodus. Leave Babylon and come to Zion. This isn't a spiritual thing, though yes, your mind has to be purged of the Babylon indoctrination that blinds you to the truth. To follow a true seer who sees. And so in this case, they are harvesting. They are not planting. Your life, you are stuck working for somebody. Would you be willing to give up your job to go to Zion when called? When called. You have to wait for the call. Or would the cares of the world prevent you from going to Zion? That you weren't willing to make that risk. Maybe if there was a group of people that you could feel comfortable with, then you would go, if others were also doing it. I saw on YouTube a recommended Mormon channel that was covering a talk by Holland in which he quoted from Joel of the prophecy of Mormons in the latter days having dreams and visions, and ordered you to have dreams and visions. You either have them or you don't. Everybody has dreams, but prophecy dreams is what Joel is referring to. SEER. But as this is the last of the latter days, we're transitioning into the millennium right now. The latter days are over. This is the final feast to purge you, like the sons of Levi, to purify you for Zion. Who is searching for their true Christ? Who is a seer? Not somebody with a title who holds you in bondage. You should be having dreams that relate to inheritance, to an exodus, to a Christ. All of us dream. But if you hear of past destructions that have occurred and survivors talking about how they felt like they shouldn't do their normal routine that day, and thus they believed they were saved because of it. This is what you should be having right now. There should be those of you who are getting those dreams, those impressions, to do something out of the ordinary, because you don't know, but you understand something is coming. If you were in tune to the Spirit, this is what you would be having right now. So if you're not, and you're concerned because you're following me, you're doing okay too. Because you're following me. Mormons refuse to test their prophets. They refuse to test their seers. Because we all know the answer would be false. And so what would Mormons do? Who would they follow? If this church isn't true, then nothing is true. Really? First you have to know the truth before you can unlearn it. Learn that in art. Mr. Swegheimer in high school. So then he goes on to healing, like the therapeutic. How did I know? How did I know? And so, the keys of Peter, James, and John are the keys of sowing, planting seeds. And so Peter, in this sense, is the one who has the visions of spreading the word to the people as the leader of the 12 apostles. Thus, the keys of Peter, James, and John is to plant the word into people's hearts. It is not the keys of the leader of the church for harvest. That belongs to the Christ. This is understood by Joseph Smith, and he told the quorum of the 12 when they were newly licensed in 1835, was it? March 28th, 1835. Joseph Smith Papers has everybody's license who was in attendance in this talk. And notice the name of the church. It's the same name that Joseph Smith put in his 1838 visionary accounts. Interesting, the Times and Seasons always called him a seer, never a prophet. Why do we call Nelson only a prophet? The prophet. Why don't we call him the seer? Isn't a seer greater than a prophet? Because a seer is a prophet and a revelator too, and can translate. Verse 91 of section 107. And again, the duty of the president to the office of the high priesthood is to preside over the whole church, and to be like unto Moses, to have all the gifts which God bestows upon the head of the church of seer, prophet, revelator, translator. The keys of Moses is the keys of the Jewish Christ, Messiah ben David. It is not a lesser being of prophet. It is not the keys of Peter, James, and John. So when you go to section 110 for the vision in the Kirtland Temple on the third day of Passover, verse 11 is the keys of Moses, which are the keys of the gathering of Israel from the 4 parts of the earth and the leading of the 10 tribes from the land of the north. That's this Feast of Tabernacles, and we're on day 2. If Joseph Smith is a true seer, prophet, revelator, and translator, then this prophesied Christ would be here right now. He would be calling you to follow him, to get you out of Babylon to safety in Zion in a coming day. Do you hear his voice? Turn up your volume. I have people who keep complaining on videos where I do not speak. It's just pictures. And people complain, I can't hear anything. You're not supposed to. Read the memes. Oh my God. And so, if you hadn't caught on, the false prophets who are leading you astray are purposely trying to purge you from the church. I knew I was going to go there. I went and clicked it out. So in Matthew 25, he's still talking about the latter days and the gathering to Zion. He's already done the latter-day prophecies, warning about false Christs and false prophets and the signs in the heavens that you're supposed to be looking for. Right? You're looking for the signs in the heavens. Sun shall be darkened, moon turn to blood, stars fall from heaven. It's in Joel 2. And then he goes into the 10 virgins And then the talents, where Nelson claims he's going to hand over all the money to Jesus. In a coming day, you're still waiting for Jesus, aren't you? You never put Nelson to the test to find out he's false, and so you're still holding on with your faith bubble that he's going to be true and prove everybody wrong. When you already should have put him to the test to find out he's wrong. Thus, there won't be Jesus. And thus, he's trying to purge you as a sensitive snowflake from his church. That's what's next. And before him shall be gathered all nations. The keys of Moses to Zion. And he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. Nelson is not the true seer. Nelson, had you put him to the test, is false. And so what he has been doing these whole latter days, that you've been offended with my conference video clips about him, is his attempt to destroy Mormonism. So that only the most loyal to his lies remain in the church. Now, previously, thanks to Monson, there was a massive purge of 13 million. And it's now grown to 12 or 15 million who have just said, I'm out. I want nothing more to do with this church. And so only about 2.5 million are active, loyal to this church, not having run the test as everyone else did. But the 15 million aren't running the test to find the true seer. And so many of them who do YouTube videos only criticize this church and frame and blame Joseph as Brigham did. When they know Brigham was wrong, yet they believe Brigham when he blames Joseph. Not a single ex-foe or nevermo knows that Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon are Jewish. Nobody's running the test for the Jews. They're only running the test as a Christian. And obviously they ain't true as Christian. Duh. And so this dividing of sheep and goats, Nelson is doing for you by separating out the sheep. But because the sheep did not know how to run the test, the sheep are lost. Nelson is scattering the sheep. And those 2.5 million, plus or minus, are the goats. And boy, are they evil. I had Deep Purple Queen the other day. Just a vessel of wrath, because she will not put these false Christs and false prophets and false teachers to the test. She has no clue that when Nelson did away with the home teaching program, did away with the high priest group, which was under Joseph a quorum, that when he did away with an hour of church, when he did away with a priesthood meeting of conference, when he did away with the veil, when he changed the law of chastity to polygamy, when he added to the law of the gospel polygamy. What did you think the higher law of Jesus is? Did you never even read the text? There is no higher law of Jesus. Bruce R. McConkie put the chapter heading in for the Book of Mormon. There is no higher law. The Jesus character himself says specifically that he has not come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. Nelson is playing on your ignorance of scriptures, and thus keeps botching them, getting the doctrines wrong, getting translations wrong. And you don't see it. The manuals are getting changed. If people who are intelligent in their scripture knowledge were to join this church, they'd see these errors. It's 3 in the morning. Leave them alone. Let them go to sleep. I have to call the cops. And so this is what Nelson has been doing. And so his little gameplay of in the coming days, you're supposed to be putting him to the test and going, wait a minute, he's saying Jesus is coming. This church believes that Jesus is coming from outer space and is going to mass murder people and coup the government. And you want to be a part of that kind of church, huh? A terrorist organization. Why? Why do you choose to be evil? Why do you choose to hate mankind? Because that's the fruit of this church. They hate people. Blacks, LGBTQIAPL+, women, the poor, those who are not of the pure white master race. They steal your money. They will not give you freedom. They will not give you agency. They threaten the second coming destruction of Jesus if you don't pay. And you can't identify that as a false Christ? A false prophet? A false seer? The church themselves say, we will not predict the future. We will not give you days and hours of the second coming. And they quote the Christians who wrote it in, no man knows the day or the hour. And you believe them. Because you have no idea how to study scriptures. You know not how to use science in your research. Linguistic patterns to see that the added text does not belong. And that they were added by Christians trying to insert their first creed of Christianity upon the people, to lead them astray. And so there's also the wheat and the tares that are also talked about in the scriptures. Separating of the wheat from the tares, but Nelson is hoarding the tares for himself. Casting out the wheat. He is planning on murdering people. They already did the test run in 2020, so says Oaks. Mass murder and a government coup. That's the second coming. What happened in 2020, Mormons? Mass murder and a government coup. And Oaks confessed that he's in charge of it as the presidency of the church. This church is the enemy. And those who stay are the enemy. And they get you to commit their crimes. You are following the enemy. And so you don't know that in October's conference, when Nelson said in a coming day now, instead of in the coming days, the second coming of Jesus, mass murder, government coup. Well, who won the presidency? Through AI. Trump. Oaks already confessed it's going to be a coup. Trump won. With AI. And so what's coming? There are 4 events to finish it all off with the transfer into the millennium. The fall, the transfer of authority, the Exodus, and the building of Zion. The first 2 have already happened for government. America has fallen. We no longer adhere to the United States Constitution. It's not hanging by a thread, it's gone. Joseph Smith said brink of ruin, not hang by a thread. That was Brigham's alteration, because he knew that talk. He was called out in that talk by Joseph Smith as the enemy. So Brigham didn't like that and didn't publish it. Joseph was referring to his parable in section 101, starting in verse 43, referring specifically to verse 51 of the destruction of Mormons by the enemy, whom he said was Brigham. Is Joseph a true seer, prophet, revelator, translator? Did you run the test? Or do you trust other people who don't run the test? Nelson says Jesus is Trump. Number 3 will be mass deportation for him. And number 4 will be MAGA Nation. They've already got the transfer. So once it becomes official, when they're all sworn into office, it officially becomes MAGA Nation. And the world will descend into war. The only place on earth that is supposed to be at peace, safety, and refuge would be Zion. And you want to stay with a false prophet? With a false Christ? Who insults a Jew at the Vatican temple? 10 Commandments are Jewish. It's not about Jesus. And to show a Jew a statue of a false Christ, wow, Suarez, that takes cojones to be that evil. That's it. For now, day 2. All you had to do was put them to the test. It's a real simple thing. And yet, Mormons are scared that if they find out the church is false, they have nowhere else to turn. But that's why you seek for the truth. That's why you study the scriptures. That's why you look for the one who does fulfill the prophecies. You should have known that if you'd studied. Because otherwise, you'll be cast into everlasting fire, cursed, as it's prepared for the devil and his angels, the day that shall burn as an oven, the war that will come. Instead of purging your mind, spirit, and heart to purify yourself as the sons of Levi, to go to Zion. Do not be heretics. We should probably use those girls.